Sounds good. So we're gonna have today, for today's lesson, we're gonna have HTML final review and intro to CSS. So this is our fourth lesson, and we're just gonna wrap everything that we've learned about HTML today really quick. And then we're gonna have like a little bit of introduction to CSS, which is the styling now. So let's get started. So what we have learned so far about HTML is a hypertext markup language, acts as the general structure for our web page. Think about skeleton. And so yeah, the general structure of the HTML document, we've learned doc type, we've learned like head, body, HTML, all that. And then we learned, first tag we learned was paragraph tag. And then the heading tag from H1, H2, all the way to H6, depending on the size. And also we've learned the italic tag, which makes the text italicized. Bold tag does the same thing. It bolds the text, and underline, it underlines the text. And we've learned two big like break, or like some kind of a line tag, which is the break tag, which is basically breaks the elements with more space. And horizontal rule tag, it does the same thing, but it has like a little bit of a line across the website. And then we have the unordered and ordered list tags, which is a UL with LIs and OL with the LIs. So unordered is just bullet points and ordered is numbers. And image tag and anchor tag. So these are the two things we learned yesterday. So we have this image source equals image.jpg, alt equals description. And remember, the SRC stands for what the location of the file that we want to bring. Remember the absolute path versus relative paths. And we have alt, which is a description. If the picture doesn't load for some reason, this will display instead. And anchor tag. So I actually didn't call it an anchor tag yesterday, or sorry, on Tuesday, but it's actually called anchor tag, but short for A. And so we have the href attribute, and this is the link that we want to go to. And then if we put a text in between, then if you click on this text, then you'll go to this web page. All right, so this is review about everything. Does anyone have questions about any of the stuff we've learned so far? All right, sounds good. And then we'll move on. So what we're learning today for the first time, we're going to learn what is CSS, first of all, the general structure of CSS, CSS properties, and CSS selectors. So what is CSS and why do we need it? So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. And I'm quoting a Wikipedia here, but it's basically a style sheet language used for describing the presentation of a document written in a markup language such as HTML. So basically it's saying whatever we learned and we put on our HTML document with like the text, headings, lists, and all of that, we're actually going to be decorating them in like different colors, different fonts, different sizes, so that it looks like prettier, so that it's not just like a raw text on our web page. So yeah, that's what it stands for. And so if we think HTML as skeleton, do you guys remember the skeleton from our first lesson? So yeah, so HTML is like a structure of our web page, right? Like a skeleton. And CSS is actually the clothes that we put on the skeleton. So we're gonna make the skeleton look a little bit prettier, a little bit different. And depending on who you are, you dress differently, right? So same goes for CSS, where depending on the coder, they can put like different colors and different, fonts, as I've mentioned before, to your liking. So not all CSS is gonna be the same. Yeah, so we're gonna be editing fonts, colors, orientation of the elements, sizes, etc. So let's move on to actual content. So how do we use it? What is the general structure of CSS? So there's three styles of using CSS. So there's inline, which is coding inside the HTML elements. And we have the internal, which is coding CSS sheet inside the HTML file. These two sound really similar, but it's a little bit different. So inline is in the elements and internal is not in the elements. It's just in the file. And external is coding in a separate CSS document. And we'll most likely be using external the most, but we'll be exploring all of the options today. So first we have the inline CSS. So do you guys remember how we learned about attributes last time? So in short, attributes basically provide extra information about the tag, and we always put it in the start tag. So never goes on the end tag. And it usually has the format name equals value, right? So similar to this, we're going to be using style attribute for CSS. And the general format is style equals quotation mark, name, and value. So in this example, we see that the name is color, right? So we're going to be changing the color of the text. And the value is green. So the text is going to turn green. So pretty straightforward, right? But it's going to be kind of annoying if we keep doing this for every single element, because this only works for this specific tag, right? It only works for text here and it doesn't work for anything else. So we're going to be learning another style, which is internal CSS. So do you guys remember how we had title on our head, right? On our head tag. And we're actually going to put a new stuff called style tag. So style, because it's everything goes inside of the head, is considered as like an information for HTML, and it actually like doesn't provide structure at all, right? For example, like the title was also on the heading of our web page, not the actual web page. So similarly, we're gonna put a style tag, and this doesn't appear, like this P doesn't appear on the web page, but this is just information about our tags that are gonna change. So inside our style tag, we first have this selector, which selects which element we're going to be editing. So I put, for this example, I put P, which is the paragraph tag, right? And then these curly brackets. So no more of like these brackets. Is now we're going to be using curly brackets to specify where to put our editing values. So everything in between these two are going to be for paragraph tag. And then we have the name colon value, which is just as described before. Name is the color and value is the, whatever color we want to use, so that we know, like the computer knows that we're going to be changing something about the color and what value we're going to change it to. And notice how this is the same format as the inline style. So we have color colon green, and it's called color colon green as well. Oh, and one more thing, sorry, I forgot to mention. We have to have these semicolons every single line. So these semicolons are going to be what's separating different properties. So we absolutely need this when we have CSS. So do not forget the semicolon. So yeah, so the structure is about the same for color colon green, but it's just like the way we use it is a little bit different. And the benefit of having internal CSS instead of, putting it inline is that unlike the inline CSS, we can actually edit many elements at a time. So this inline actually, we're going to get into it more, but it actually edits every single paragraph tag we have. So this internal CSS, sorry. And so you notice how I didn't put anything in the paragraph tags here, but they all changed to green. And that's because we specified in our head tag that every single paragraph tag is going to be green color. All right. And then lastly, we have external CSS. So this is another way of editing our HTML with CSS. And this is the way we're going to be doing this in this class, because I think it's the best way personally out of the three. And it's just more organized. So we'll talk about it. So this is my folder, the final website demo folder, and it has my HTML and it has my image folder from last time, right? But it also has a style sheet. So this is a CSS file we're interested in, right? And this CSS file looks like this. So notice how the format is still the same. It's P curly bracket and like color or font size or stuff like that, but it's just in a different document instead of it being on HTML. And the way we're gonna link it to our HTML, because this is a two different documents. So how are they gonna know how to communicate with each other, right? So on the head tag, remember head is always for information about the HTML, right? So head tag, we have the link tag now, and rels, we're gonna always have rel equals style sheet. So this is just saying, oh, we're gonna have a CSS document coming up. And href, remember this href from which tag, Annabelle?
Sorry, I didn't hear that. What was it? Sorry.
So we
My
have this href tag, href attribute, right? Where do you recognize it from? From the stuff we learned on Tuesday. I mean Wednesday, sorry.
I think it was either the image or the A.
Yeah, good job. So it was the A tag. So I can't really go back all the way, but it's in the A. So do you remember what it stands for, Joanna?
The link.
Yeah. So in A tag, it stands for the link that we're gonna go to, right? So similarly, this is also gonna be a path, but except we're gonna do a path to a CSS file. So you see, because it's on the same folder, we're just putting in style.css. And this is what kind of path? Remind me, Paul. What kind of path is this?
It leads you to a file.
But is it a relative path or
I think it might be you're using since you if you're using how should I say
no, it's okay, take your time.
let's see, if you're using a full path to file, then you should use a absolute path, and if you're using a path to not move,
Like get to the file like from the current file, right?
yes.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, Paul, good job. So remember, absolute path is same direction anywhere, but we have to specify every single directory or every single folder, every single file that it takes in order to get to that place. And relative path is if they're in the same folder, for example, you can just kind of tell the computer to go from that folder to the file that we want. So for example, this right here is relative file. So a relative path, because it's only
you're directly going to the file you want to use.
exactly, yeah. So if it was an absolute file, we would have to be like, oh, user slash desktop slash like final website demo slash, all that stuff. But because we're already in the same folder as index and style, so we just have to use relative path. So yeah, good job, Paul. So yeah, so just to sum everything up, in order to link this CSS to our HTML, we need this link tag with rel equals style sheet with quotations, and href equals quotations our CSS file. Okay, so this is gonna change depending on what you name your CSS file. All right, and what are the benefits of external CSS? So it's very simple and very intuitive. Just like the internal CSS, we can edit many elements at the same time. So inline CSS, remember, we couldn't do this. Let me go back. Inline was just editing one element at a time, right? This one paragraph. And internal, you can actually edit many different paragraphs. And similar to this, external also has the benefit of internal. So we can edit many different elements at the same time. And because inline only lets us edit one element at a time, but also it makes our code more organized and therefore easier to edit it. And if we wanted to like edit the style or the CSS, we just have to go to our CSS file instead of searching through our HTML file. And this is crucial because in coding, organization is everything. So not just for yourself, but for others as well. So let's say someone else is looking at your HTML file. If it looks really cluttered and if it has so many things in it, like it's harder for them to read it, right? And understand what it is. So having a separate CSS file is just a good organizational skill, just to make it easier for the reader. Oh, this is everything in this file is going to be in CSS and everything is going to be HTML in this HTML document. So sounds good. So yeah, so I think you guys might have noticed a little bit because I did talk about it, but there's three parts into the general structure of CSS. So now we've learned like how to store CSS, right? So how do we actually use it? So we have the selector, which selects the HTML element we want to edit. And we have the property, which is a property of the element we want to edit. So this is going to be like size, font, color, etc. And value, which is going to be how to edit them. So if it's color, oh, like what color do you want it? Or if it's size, what size do you want to put it? So these are the values that are always going to change depending on what you want to put. But properties, their names stay the same because there are certain properties that can be edited and that cannot be edited based on the tag. So yeah, quick exercise. I'm gonna call on, actually, let's do a popcorn style. So in this example right here, we have this H3 and then color, cat blue, and font family, Arial sans serif, right? So which one of these is a selector, Grace? So which one's a selector out of these three colors, different things? And a little bit of a,
I mean
sorry, what was that?
color thing.
Ooh, really close. This is a little bit of a hint. So selector goes somewhere here, right? Because it selects what HTML element we want.
What was the question again?
So which one's the selector? The selector. You can just read it off the screen if you like.
The thing.
Yeah. It's the H3. Good job,
The
Grace.
top.
Yeah. So this is a selector. So selector selects whatever we want to edit. So in this CSS, we're saying, oh, we're going to edit all the H3 tags. All right. So how about Grace calling somebody else?
Hannah.
All right, Hannah, what do you think are the properties here? So there's two of them. You can just name one if you like, or both of them if you want.
I don't know.
Oh, no, it's okay. A little bit of hint. So all the properties goes here before the colon, right? So which one's like, what's behind the colons here? Want to help her out really quick?
Properties are so like how you want to edit like the size or the font or the color of the element you want to edit. So it would be like the font family, for example, where you want to decide the font Arial and sans serif or whatever font you'd like to use.
Yeah, good job. Good job, both Hannah and Paul. So we have properties as color and then font family. So these are the things that we're going to be changing. All right. And lastly, for values, Hannah, do you want to call in anyone else? Any of your classmates?
Abby.
All right, Abby. So what are the values here that are specified?
Like cadet blue, Arial, and sans serif.
Yeah. So the values here are cadet blue, Arial sans serif. So good job. So these are all the different structure of our CSS. All right, and now we're gonna learn about different CSS properties. So now that we've learned the general structure of CSS and how it works, we're gonna be diving deeper into it and learning what are the different properties that we're allowed to edit. So, interesting. I think I accidentally ordered it wrong, but so basically, let me just do a quick exercise with that then. Sorry, I'm supposed to put it right after this. Oh yeah, but we're gonna do a quick demo. So I'm gonna go on our Baby Yoda file that we made last time. And I'm just gonna put all the different heading tags. So heading 2, heading 3. And we've already covered this before, and I'm gonna just go up to heading 4. So let's make a different CSS file. So I'm gonna go in Visual Studio Code, and I'm gonna go to File, New File. Select the language and CSS. And notice how, remember how for HTML we had to put doc type, HTML and stuff, right? We actually don't have to do that for CSS. So it's really convenient. So we're gonna get right into it. So I'm gonna edit only the heading 3. Let's see. So I wanna edit heading 3. Curly brackets. And then if I do color green, oh, I need to save it. So I'll save it as style.css. And notice how if we go to Baby Yoda now, nothing's changed. All the colors are still black. And the reason why is because we haven't linked it yet. So let's link our file. So on the head, I'm going to do a link rel equals style sheet. And then href equals style.css because we just named it style.css. And it should be green now. So we see that heading 3 is green. And actually, we're going to go into this further. So I'm kind of explaining this early, but notice how if we add more headings that are in H3, it also gets edited to green because we selected every single H3 tags. So yeah, that's a quick demo. And let's get into the different properties. Sorry. Let me just learn laser pointer. All right, so first CS property, we've already seen it a lot. It's called color. And basically the color property defines the color of the element. And it's usually used to change the color of the text in our class. And there's 3 different ways of selecting colors. So there's number 1, preset colors in CSS. So in CSS, there's already a lot of colors that are available. So you can just type in black and it'll give you black. You can just type in white and it'll give you white. Or the RGB value. Does anyone know the RGB value any chance? Does anyone know what that is? Okay, Abby, do you want to explain to us a little bit?
I know that you have you see how it's 3 numbers. The first one where it's 0 is the first 0 is red, so there's no red. The second 0 is green, so there's no green since it's 0. And then there's 250 is the highest. 255 is the highest you can go, and so that part is blue. So it's solid blue.
Yeah, good job. That was fantastic. So RGB value, you don't have to know this by the way, because there's so many already preset colors, but I'm just trying to show you different ways of doing this. So RGB value, just like she said, it specifies the how much red and how much green, how much blue these 3 primary colors take in order to make a separate color. So in here, we see that there's no red, there's no green, and there's only blue. So you don't have to know this. Don't worry if you're confused. And another one, we can use the color hex code. So this is similar to the RGB value, but we're just not gonna get into it because it's a little bit difficult. So yeah, just know that the color property defines the color of the element. And we've just done a quick demo. Actually, let's do one more. Okay, so I have the index HTML already pulled up. And this is a lot of stuff, right? Which sentence should we put to a different color? I'm gonna choose H2. Okay, so I'm gonna make all the H2s. And let me just link the style sheet again. Style sheet href equals style.css. And in our style CSS, we're gonna do H2. And notice when we type in color with the inside of the curly brackets, there's on VS Code, there's like a lot of colors that pop up, right? So these are all the preset colors. So we can choose like any of them if we'd like. And it disappears when you press space. So if you wanted to see all the options again, then you just have to go back and type in colon again right after color. Let's see. Oh, sorry. Joanna, which color should we use? Just pick a color for us.
Blue.
Okay, blue. Sounds good. Blue, and make sure, what are we forgetting here? Is anything that we're forgetting here, Joanna, that we forgot to type? Yeah, semicolon. Make sure you always have the semicolon. And we see when we launch index.html, we see that this text becomes blue. And as simple as that, right? No, there's a lot of them. And then one more thing. Actually, we'll just cover the rest later. Okay, so that was a quick demo. And next we have the background color property. So the background color property defines the color of the background of the element. So there's 3 ways of selecting color, just like, the color property that we've had before. But basically this changes the background color. And notice how we're doing background dash color colon. So if we look at it right here, so on H2, we're still going to be editing H2, and I'm going to put background color. Hannah, what's your favorite color?
Purple.
Purple? Okay, we can go with purple. And we can type this too instead of selecting it. So purple, we see it right here, and then semicolon. And the background color, the background color of our HTML is gonna be purple like that. Do you see how like it's kind of like highlighted? So yeah, that's how it works. All right, next we have the width and height. So this is what Abigail was asking about last lesson. Oh, sorry, not Abigail, Annabelle. I am so sorry. Annabelle was asking about this last lesson about how we can change like the size of our image, right? Because we put an image on the web page. So we're gonna be defining the size of the element with width and height. And we usually do this to change like the size of an image, button, different boxes, etc. Width and height is not really used for any text. So I think we can use it for paragraph tags and heading tags, but there's really no reason to. So 2 ways of selecting sizes. We have the pixel values. So for example, we have this 100 pixels, 200 pixels, and pixels are just measurement of size on the computer. So you can like, when you get your homework, you can like experiment with different numbers. So we have 100 px, 200 px, and make sure you guys include this px into it. And percentages. So the percentages are dependent on the size of the element's container. So if we make the width 50%, and if like there's nothing else except the image, then the image will be 50% of the whole web page. And we'll see that happening in just now. So we have this baby Yoda picture and I'm gonna edit it. So I'm gonna do image, curly brackets. I'm gonna do width. What percentage should I do, Grace? Or pixels? Any number you want. Grace, do you have any numbers like in like hundreds?
200?
Yeah, 200 is good. 200, I'm gonna do pixels. And then height, I'm gonna make it. Actually, let's just not change the height. Let's just change the width for now. So we see if we refresh this got a lot smaller, right? So that's because we changed the width of it to be a lot smaller, and the height changed with it, unless we specify it otherwise. So it still keeps the general picture pretty nice, right? But what if we change the height as well? So let's say we want to change the height to like 500 pixels. And then it changes like this. It gets stretched out. There's a skinny baby Yoda. So yeah, that's how we change our pixels. And I'm gonna try with percentages. So I'm gonna do width is 50%. And you'll notice that it takes up half of our page, right? 50% is half. And if we do like with this 100%, then it's gonna take up everything, the whole website. So yeah, that's a quick demo of how width and height works. And let's get back into our presentation. Okay, so the next property is font. And you can actually just put font, but there's actually different sub properties. So I think it's always personally better to use sub properties so that we know which ones we're changing. So first we have the font family property, which defines the font of the text. And it's used like this: font family, Arial comma, sans serif. And there's so many different fonts you can use, but I can't really list every single one of them yet. Or I'm not gonna have time to list every single one of them. So there's like a details of the allowed fonts on this website if you guys want to visit. And these slides are on Google Classroom, so if you guys want to revisit them, you can always do. Actually, let's just see. Let's just go to the website and see. So these are all the different font families that are available. So we have Arial, Helvetica, Verdana, Trebuchet, and Jill Sans, etc. All right. And next we have the font size. So this defines the size of the font. Remember how heading tags kind of change the sizes, but we can like have more control over sizes as well. So we can have font size equals 15 pixels. Remember pixels again. Or we can do font size : large. And there's also like small, like normal or medium, I guess. Or we can do percentages as well. So we have 150%, 100%, 70%. But this is not going to be same percentage that you think for the images that we've made. So feel free to test them out. With the font style, we can make it italic, oblique, etc. We do have the italic tag, but this is just like a nice little extra thing that we can also use to italicize the texts. And with the font weight, so we did have the bold tag, but we can have more freedom on like what kind of boldness we want. So we have bold, lighter, bolder, and stuff like that. So these are all the different ways that you can edit your fonts or text on the webpage. So quick understanding though, which color does H3 take on if we specify the color property 3 times in a row? And these are all different colors, by the way. Do you have any guesses? And you don't have to get this right. But do you guys have any guesses on like possibly like what color it will take on? Abby, do you want to take a guess? You have 33% chance.
Maybe the first one.
Oh, good guess. Good guess. I'm gonna pick on one more person. Joanna, what color do you think it'll take?
Maybe a combination.
Oh, that's a fun guess. So like combination of all these three different colors.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, those two guesses are all good. But actually, I'm so sorry, but it's actually gonna be the last color. So the latest property gets taken in CSS. So no matter what we define before, if we define it again with a different value, then actually the latest one is gonna be taken to effect. So for example, F331FF, which is a pinkish color, displays instead. So we have this text in H3, that's pink. So yeah, great guesses. Yeah, and these are all the list of CSS properties. Some of them I've already mentioned, and some of them we're gonna be mentioning again later. But I want to tell you guys, there's so many different properties to use. I've only named a few out of a bunch. So if you're curious about like which ones we can use, please visit by this website or use Google to like search up, oh, like how to change the orientation of the text, or how do you change the color, or how do you change the font. This is personally a really good resource for me, this website, or just Google is also good. So yeah, as you're doing more CSS practices, you'll be able to see what I mean. All right, and CSS selectors. So before we get into CSS selectors, let's do like a quick 5-minute break. So we'll get started at 7:45. Really quick. Everyone, put your cameras up again, videos, and we'll get started. All right. So next we have the CSS selectors. Let me see. All right, so we have the CSS selectors. We're going to be finishing up on CSS. And so what CSS selectors are, so you guys might have noticed like we selected different tags, right? H3, like paragraph or different things right here. There's actually different ways of doing this. So as mentioned before, selector is a powerful tool that lets us choose which elements we want to apply our CSS properties to. And this is where our knowledge of attributes also come to shine. So we learned about attributes last lesson, and we're just going to be building up on that. And so there's actually 4 ways, sorry for the typos, but there's ID selector, there's class selector, and tag selector, and there's also universal selector. So we'll go over the easiest ones first. So first we have the universal selector. So universal selectors are useful for editing every single elements the same way. So let's say if you want all of your text to be in a certain font, or if you want all the elements to have like borders around them. And how do you use it? Is you just put asterisk as your selector right here, and just the same curly brackets with like the properties and value. And this changes all the colors to blue, for example. So this is used very limitedly because you rarely want to edit every single thing the same way. So yeah, this is a universal selector. And next we have the tag selector. So I think we've already kind of talked about it, but basically it's useful for editing all of the same tag elements the same way. So let's say if you want all of your paragraphs to have a certain font, or you want all of your H1s to be blue. I keep saying color blue a lot. Sorry, I should have had more elaborate examples. But yeah, so how you name it or how you use it is name of the tag and then curly brackets. And for example, if you wanted to change all the paragraphs tags to be a different font, then you just do P and then curly brackets, font family, Gill Sans, whatever font you want to put, and it changes to something like this. And next we have the class selector. So this is where things get a little bit different. So it's useful for editing different elements in the same way. So similar to the tag selector, except that it doesn't necessarily have to be the same tag. It can be multiple tags that are different tags at a time. So you don't have to like use all of your paragraphs. So let's say you don't want all of your paragraphs to be a different. This is wrong. I am so sorry. But yeah, so for example, so how to use it is in HTML, you have to specify the tag with the class attribute. So for example, I use a paragraph tag for now, but you can use it bracket P and then class equals and class name. And in CSS, we're gonna be putting dot class name. So we'll see an example of this. So for example, we have the index HTML right here, and we named all of these tags as class attribute. So we have all the class equals demo. So all of these tags are going to be under demo. And so on style.css, we have this dot demo, and every single one of these tags are going to be in color dark cyan, like this. These are all different tags, but they all have the same color. And then next we have the ID selector. So this is useful for editing only one element at a time. And you don't want, like, let's say you don't want all of your paragraphs to be the same color and you just want one of the paragraphs to be green, then you can use this ID selector. But this is also limited use because you'd only use it for like changing one thing. So this isn't used to like change multiple things at once. So in HTML, you're gonna put a paragraph tag, ID equals name. So this is the ID attribute that we're interested in. And in CSS, you're gonna do this hashtag, and then you're gonna do the ID's name. So, and one other thing is that ID selector actually overrides any other selector. So even if you have like a preset color on the element with like a different, like, let's say like we have like a class selector or like a universal selector, this is going to override whatever we already have in the past. So for example, if you set the background color to be blue with the tag selector and then set it to be red with an ID selector, then the background color will be red because the ID selector overrides everything. And we have an example here. So all these tags are still under the class demo, but we listed as one of the list items to be ID equals different. And on CSS, we can actually use this hashtag different, curly brackets, and then color equals pink. So that this list item is gonna be pink. So this pink is now the only different color because it's ID selected. Okay, so the summary of everything we've learned so far. We have CSS is a cascading style sheet used to decorate our HTML. And 3 ways to apply CSS. First, we have inline using style attribute, which is P style equals quotations color green. Or internal, which is using the style tag in the head tag. So we have this style tag, and then we put P curly brackets this time, and then whatever we want to change. And it doesn't necessarily have to be P, depending on what you want to edit. And external, and this is the one that we're going to be using the most. So we're going to be using a separate CSS document and list all these changes. And this is how the CSS is structured. So we have the selector, curly brackets, property 1, colon value 1, property 2, colon value 2. And the list of properties are in the later slides. I put them again, or again, you can visit by this website. And the 4 different types of selectors. So we have the universal selector, which selects every single element with an asterisk. And we have the tag selector with the tag name on it, like P, H1, UL, all the tags you guys learned so far in HTML, and which selects all the elements under the same tag. The class selector is dot class name. So this selects all the elements under the same class, and class is defined in HTML with the class attribute. In the starting tag of any element, we're gonna put class equals and then class name. And lastly, we have the ID selector, which changes only one element at a time. So it's going to be specified with hashtag ID name and then curly brackets. And this ID is also defined in HTML with ID attribute. So we have open bracket, some kind of element, and then ID equals ID name. And this is kind of important right here. It's specificity of the selectors. So let's say we're using all the different selectors to different things. So this is how the ranking of the importance. So even if you put something in universal, all the tag selectors are gonna override that. And even if you do anything on the tag, it's gonna go over to class and so on and so on. And inline is basically the most specified. So this is gonna override everything. And we'll be discussing this in our little demo. So we have 5 minutes before our class ends. So these are all the list of CSS properties. Sorry. And then we're gonna be doing different demo. Okay. All right, so now we have this index.html we're gonna edit. Let's go to VS Code. All right, so we've already edited the h2 tag and then the image tag, right? So this time, okay, let's use the tag selector. So these are already tag selectors, but let's say I wanted to change all the paragraphs to be font, let's say weight, and I want to make them all bold. Then all the paragraphs are going to be bold right here, as you see. Okay, next we have universal selector, right? So I'm going to make all of these different font. I'm going to do font family. And they give me like different selections. I'm going to use set gold.ui. I have no idea what this does, but on our website, we see if we refresh, all of the text becomes different font, right? Because we used it universal selector. All right, and I'm gonna try using a class selector now. So I'm only gonna edit like every other sentence. So I'm gonna put this as, you can name this whatever you want. And let's say I want to name this, I'll just name it Yoda. You can just name it anything, but when it gets to your actual website, try to name it something like relevant. So I'm gonna use this Yoda as well. And not only am I gonna change some of the paragraph tags, I'm also gonna be changing like this order list tag. So I'm gonna put class equals Yoda. And does anyone remember how you change or how you select classes? Abby, do you remember by any chance? No, no worries. Joanna, anyone?
Do you have to like write a certain
Oh
line?
yeah, so there's one thing that goes, so we have the class name as Yoda, right? But there's one thing that goes before that name.
Is it like the P class?
Ooh, really close. So a little bit, let's review really quick.
Oh.
So we have the class selector as this, right? And so, yeah, so before we select a class, we have to put like a little bit of a dot indicating that this is going to be a class. All right, good job, Joanna. So, and then let's edit all the Yodas to be, let's pick a color, aquamarine. And you'll see on the website, oh, where did the website go? That all of these things that we've selected with the class tag is actually gonna be a different color. And let's do more. So we've changed all of these fonts to be different like font, right? And let's say I only want beep and ding to be different. Or let's say I only want beep to be different font. So I'm gonna put an ID on it. I'm gonna name this different. And how do we use the ID selector? Does anyone remember? No. Oh yeah. So yeah, it's gonna be hashtag. So before we specify the name of the ID, so we're gonna do hashtag, and then since we named it different with the attribute right here, and it's gonna be different. And with curly brackets, I'm gonna change the font family for this to be Gill Sans instead. And we see if we update this, we see that, that's interesting. Oh, I forgot to put semicolons. And yeah, it's not really noticeable because we didn't use like a totally different font. Let me do something more noticeable. Let's say Times New Roman, right? And you'll notice that only this is Times New Romans right here. And everything else is still the Segway UI font. So yeah, that's how you use different tags. We have this universal tag. We have these universal selector, and then we have this tag selector, and then we have the class selector and the ID selector. All right, and that's it for today's lesson. Any questions about anything?